YouTube family, hope you guys are having a great day. Today we are taking a deep dive walkthrough into one of my favorite apps, Adobe Fresco. So let's get started. So today's video about Adobe Fresco. Now this is a video that has been on the back burner for a very long time. It's something I've been wanting to do for quite a while. In fact, ever since Adobe Fresco came out, unfortunately, I just never got around to doing it. To give you guys a little bit of a background, I've been working with Adobe Fresco now since 2017 when I was first introduced to the app. At first, I didn't see a reason why I would switch from Adobe Photoshop Sketch and Adobe Illustrator Draw to this one singular program. I didn't really see the reason behind having something that was both raster, which is pixel based, and vector, something like you get out of Adobe Illustrator. Now though, I'm completely sold. Adobe Fresco is completely engrossed into my creative process, from doing quick detailed sketches for clients to doing more concrete doodles or even full-blown illustrations for some of my projects. And one of the biggest reasons why I chose to use Adobe Fresco over something like Procreate is because it is not just raster, but vector based. Vector is one of the biggest selling points, at least for me, because all of my illustrations are vector. Unlike a lot of other illustrators and creatives, I actually do everything completely in vector. I don't like doing raster unless it's just a simple sketch. So before we get started with the walkthrough, let me just quick ask you guys, if you guys like this video, please remember to hit like. If you have any questions or comments about anything throughout the entire process or after you guys have watched the video, please feel free to leave a comment down below. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications if you'd like to see the new content I'm currently planning. In fact, today I'm recording 4 other YouTube videos, so I'm really excited about this. So without further ado, let's get started on the walkthrough. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually open up Adobe Fresco. And the first thing we're welcomed with is the welcome screen. Here you can open up all your recent projects, any projects that are saved to your Adobe Creative Cloud, or you can go through and start a new project. Over here on the left, you see that you have 4 options. You have the home, you have the your work, learn, and discover. So home is what we're seeing here. This is your home screen. Then you can click into your work and you can see all of your cloud documents that are in here. In Learn, you can actually check out some tutorials on how to use specific items here directly in Adobe Fresco. And in Discover, you can actually look at what other people have gone through and created using Adobe Fresco. So we're actually going to go back to the Home button. So what we're going to do is, to make things simple, we're just going to open up an already created document. So this is actually a doodle that I started about a week ago, right before Adobe Max started. So we're just going to use this as an example here. So when you look at your actual document, you have the artboard, which is in the center. On the left side, you have all of your different brushes and tools. You also have your color panel, the ways that you change your brushes, you change settings. On the top left, you have your redo, your undo, you have your export settings, your regular settings, you have your full screen. And then on the right side, you have everything that has to do with your layers. So we're going to go through each one of these one by one so you guys can kind of see and get a feel of what you can do in Adobe Fresco. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the brushes. You have the pixel brush, you have the live brush, and then you have the vector brush. And so each one of these does its own unique thing. So my personal favorite is the vector brush, but I also use the pixel brush. Now for me, I only use the pixel brush specifically for any types of sketches or doodles and things of that nature. So I only use the pencil brush, which can be found under sketching, and the pencil brush right here. But there are a wide variety of different brushes, from your basic brushes that you would find in Photoshop. You have charcoal brushes, which are actually pretty new to Adobe Fresco, where you can go through and you can find different brushes here, and then you can kind of see like how they go about creating. I'm going to quickly just change to a different color so you guys can see this a little bit better. But you can kind of see here how the charcoal brush works. I actually kind of like that. I think it works relatively well for what its purpose is. And I think it's something that I might try and use with some of my doodles and sketches. Here, we'll drop this down here so you guys can see a little bit how it looks behind the actual line work. Now for me, like I said, I don't use the pixel brush that much because I am mostly a vector-based illustrator, but it is something good to have on hand. So I'm actually tapping the screen to undo all of that. Then you can go into the live paintbrush. And for this one, you're actually limited to how many brushes you have. There are 12 total, 5 watercolor and 7 oil-based. But these brushes pack so much power. So we're actually going to go into the watercolor for this demonstration. And we're going to choose the watercolor wash watercolor wash soft brush. So we're just going to take our pen and we're just going to glide this across the screen. As you can see, this is pretty cool. You can kind of see how when we overlap, you can see how the water goes through and expands across the actual brush itself. And you can actually control down below the actual settings. So you can control the size of the brush. You can control the flow of the brush, so how much paint is actually applied here. So if we go super low, you can kind of see, you can barely see the wash that's developing here unless you go it across some of the other pieces. Or you can go super high and you can see how it is much more heavier. You can also put how much water flow you want. So you can make it pretty dry, and then it's not going to do as much expanding when you go across certain parts. Or you can make it extremely high, where when you go across things, it really starts to spread around. So that's basically the watercolor brush. And the same thing kind of goes with the oil-based brushes here. We'll just run this across just so you can see. You can really see if we change the color to more of a blue, which don't worry, we're going to go into color a little bit later. But you can kind of see there's a lot of texture mixed in here. And you can actually mix your paints. So that's pretty cool. Again, I'm not much of a painter, so it's not something that I generally use. But I thought I would go ahead and share this with you guys for this specific tutorial. So we're going to go ahead and delete that there. And then we get into the actual vector brushes itself. So the one thing, if most of you have ever checked out any of my videos, you'll know that I generally only use a couple of different brushes for my work. So for this example here, I only use the basic round brush, which is what all of these doodles here were created with. So I'm actually going to hide this for a second just so you guys can see a little bit of what the brush can do. One thing to also note, if you notice here, my hand actually has a natural shake to it. So when I draw the line, it's a little bit wobbly. You can go down here in the bottom area and change not only the size of your brush, but you can also change how much smoothing you have. This is a very important feature for Adobe Fresco that's not available in Adobe Illustrator Draw. So I'm going to actually bring this up and I'm going to put it all the way up to like 96. And then when I draw that same line, there's still a little bit of a wobble, but it's a lot more smoother. So that's one thing that you want to make sure that you do when it comes to the vector brush is you want to make sure that you change that smoothing option. It's going to save you a lot of headaches down the line. So actually we're going to go in here and clear, and I'm going to go through all these settings, so don't worry if you miss anything. But let's actually go through. We're just going to create a quick face shape, and we're going to create this fun ear here. Draw the neckline. Just as a quick example, again, I'm a vector illustrator, so this is why we're going a little bit more into detail with this. But you can kind of see just how much potential this brush has. We're just going to do some quick simple eyes there, a quick eyebrow, smile, and then we're going to finish off with the hair up here. So this is the vector brush. Now there's a lot of potential with all three brushes, but for my specific example here, we're just focusing on the vector brush for now. Now, in addition to that, below the brushes, you also have your eraser tool, which you can go through and erase any of your markings, whether it's vector, pixel, or live paint. Now, the one thing with the eraser is depending on the type of layer, there are 2 types of layers with Adobe Fresco, technically 3, but 2 for this specific point. With vector erasers, these are your options, but if you have a pixel drawing, we're just going to do this here, and notice how it creates a new layer off to the side. When we click into the eraser, we actually see now we have the pixel erasers selected. And so these are all the erasers that you have for this. So each different layer and each brush has its own unique eraser, except for the live brushes. With the live brushes, you actually use the same pixel eraser as the pixel brush. And that is because the live paint is also raster based. It's not vector based. So let's go ahead and delete that. We'll leave our little blue guy here for now. You also have the smudge brushes as well. This is also a new feature. This is something that came out with the latest update, I believe, from Adobe Max. And this allows you to smudge things around. I don't think we can do that on a vector. No, we can't. So let's jump in here and we'll just quickly take a vector brush, or excuse me, a pixel brush, and we'll grab another color. And then we'll go into the smudges and we'll just choose a charcoal brush, just like we've been using. There we go. And then you can see here, you can actually smudge the pixel drawings. So that way, if you use charcoal in real life, you can use the smudge here to get the same type of effects that you would normally want to have. And I believe you can also change the smoothing of the smudge. You can change the strength of it, and you can change the size of it. Again, this is something that's brand new, and so the whole reason why I'm going through and making this walkthrough is because there's so many new features. So even if you are a seasoned illustrator using Adobe Fresco, there's some awesome new features that you may not know about. All right, then we have the transform tool, which we're going to click onto this guy here so we can do this. So the transform tool, we have the flip vertical, we have the flip horizontal, and then, of course, we can just move it around, change the size of it, and we can even rotate it however we want. Now, if I remember correctly, in a previous version of Adobe Fresco, this rotation tool was actually at the bottom. I'm not sure if you can actually change that, but there is a new feature that is brand new for this, and this is in case you are trying to get an exact movement. You can actually press these arrow keys, and you can just barely notice that the image is moving. And I thought this was a pretty cool tool. I don't necessarily know if it's something that I will be using a whole lot, but it is a more unique way of getting a precise move. All right, so we're going to hit the done area there. So the next tool that we have here is the Lasso tool. Just like in Photoshop and Adobe Photoshop Sketch, I believe, we have the actual Lasso tool. Now here we have 4 different options. We have the lasso, we have the brush, and then we have a square and circle. I generally don't use any of the other 3. I only use the lasso tool. But to illustrate how we can use that for this is we can actually take this and we can go and select that. And then we can also select another one of these. So now we can actually move just these 2 points. Now, this is something that is really big because it allows us to have one single layer and be able to select specific objects. All right, so now we're going to move down to the paint. As you can imagine with the paint bucket, if we go ahead, because everything is not closed off, I don't think. If we click this, oh, actually it was. Okay. So if we click that, we can actually fill the entire closed off area with a specific color, whichever color is selected down below. And a cool little feature, and we'll get into this in a moment, but you can actually click this transparent image here, and you can clear out any selection. Of course, you could do that with your undo and redo up here at the top, but that's just a quick little tip there. The other tool below that is the Shapes tool. So this is a nifty little tool here where you can go in and you can actually take a circle and then you can go and fill it. We'll actually select the color for this so we can do this as a good example. And we can fill the color here. So when the one biggest thing, this is the one drawback, and this is the thing I wish that you could do with these shapes, just like you could do in Adobe Illustrator Draw, is I wish I could take these shapes and I could actually take the brush tool and go around it. Unfortunately, there isn't that functionality there, but I have found that this is a great way to build up solid illustrations, flat vector illustrations in Adobe Fresco. You can also erase based on that shape. So if we actually refilled it and we took this and we actually grabbed the transform, made that smaller and put it into, we'll say off center. If we do erase, it erases that part of the shape. We're going to undo that though, and we can even do a mask. So we're going to hit mask, and the only problem with the mask is it's going to convert it into a pixel layer from a vector, which I generally don't like to do that. And we can also do selection. So we can select that, we can grab transform, and we can move that shape out of the way. All right, so let's undo all of that. And then we get down to another new tool in Adobe Fresco, which is the type tool. So this allows us to actually add type to our illustrations, something that, again, we weren't able to do in the past. So we can go in here, we can see on the right side, we have a layers property that popped up, and it is for a text layer. This is, again, another new layer, and we'll talk a little bit more about this stuff in a little while. But we can go in here, we can increase the size of our text, we can increase any types of leading on it, but we don't necessarily need that right now. We can change the space in between our letters a bit, and we can even change the opacity up here. I'm not going to go too much into detail here because I'm sure that you all, as you're playing around with this, you'll be able to discover a lot more with this tool. But we can go in here, we can look at many different typefaces. All of these are Adobe fonts, I believe, and all of these should be available to you. I believe there's over 7,000 free fonts. There could be more than that. There might even be 15,000. I know that it has changed over the last couple of years, but I love Adobe fonts because there's so much variety and so much power with it. But we can go in here and we can actually type in tutorial. That's what we're going to do, tutorial. And hopefully I'm spelling this right because it'd be very embarrassing if I didn't spell it right. We can change this, go back to the style of it and everything like that. But I think we're going to leave that as it is. Now with the eyedropper tool, we can actually take and go through and find specific colors that we want. We can also choose multiple colors if we want using this little tab down here. I generally only need to use the single selector, but that's a nice tool that you guys can have. All right, so we've talked about all these. The last one here, last two ones here is the actual image. So this one allows you to actually take a photo with your camera on your iPad or take from your photos, files, or your Creative Cloud. I'm not going to go into too much of that because I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but this is a nice tool to have depending on your types of needs. And the final little bit here on the tools is the actual color picker or the color dialog area. And this is something that I use a lot. It's something that you will find is very helpful when it comes to creating your vector artwork. So up here we have the actual color wheel. You have white at the top, black on the bottom left, and then you have the pixel here on the right. This is a great way, as I said earlier, to go through and remove any colors that you might not want for your illustrations. You also have the ability to use the HSB slider, which allows you to play around with the hue, the saturation, and the brightness. Now, I generally never use the HSB slider here. A lot of times, if I want to play around with color a lot with my illustrations, I will bring them directly into Adobe Illustrator where I go through and make those changes. But here we have two more spots. We have the recent and then we have the all. Now recent is any colors that you select in here, but the all is your color library. So every single color library that I have here is available to me, specifically my main library, which has over 1,300, almost 1,400 different colors. And so I can go through here and I can look at all the different color profiles I've created or color themes, and I can find specific colors that I want to use for these illustrations, and go in here and I can click onto that specific layer and fill that with a color that I want. So that is basically the color dialog box. Now let's jump over and look at the right side of the screen. So this is an area that is also very important. We have this top icon here, which actually just hides and shows your layers. And these are your layers. These are all the layers that we currently have on this document. We're actually going to clean up and delete some of these layers that we're not using anymore. And then we're just going to we'll open up this other little doodle that I started the other day that I haven't necessarily finished. So with your layers, before we get into any of the other icons on the right, let's just show the different types of layers. So as you can see up here in this layer, which actually we'll hide this so we can see this one here, we see this little round dot on the left side. Now this little round dot here indicates that this is a vector layer. If we go down here and we select this layer, we see almost like a squared circle down below here. That indicates that this is a pixel layer or a live paint layer. Both of these are used on the raster layers. And then we can also see down below that we have an image layer. So if we went through and we selected an image and placed it into this document, it would create a layer similar to that one below. And as you saw, there's also a text layer. And I believe there's one more layer that's not coming to me as of right now. So we're actually going to hide these again. And we're going to take that first one we created. And if we see, we almost have this stack here. Now this is a layer group. So if we click into that layer group, we can see that each one of these faces is on its own vector layer. This is a great way to clean up your files and make sure that everything is placed. It also allows me to go through and actually select all of these and change the size of them so that I can move them over so I can make more room for more doodles. But we're going to go through and undo that. And now we're going to, since we've already looked at these layers, now we can look at the other settings. So we're actually going to jump into this one here. And if we click on this one right here, we actually see the layer properties. So layer properties allows you to change the blending mode as well as the opacity of the layer. And I believe this also is the same with pixel layers as well. So we can go in here, we can change the blending mode. We don't have any color on here, so we can't really see what this is going to do to it. But we have all the normal blending modes that you see in Adobe Illustrator and most other apps. I personally only use the normal or I use multiply depending on what it is that I'm trying to create. All right, so then we go and drop down and we can actually go into this new part, which is called Share for Feedback. This is a brand new feature, again, that came out at Adobe Max this year, in fact, last week. And if we go in here, we can actually go and share link, which then will allow us to share this directly with someone who could be a client, could be a fellow illustrator to get thoughts and feedback and everything like that. It's a great new feature, and I would definitely suggest you guys check it out, especially if you are an illustrator or creative who is working towards working with clients. This will be a great way to get fast and easy feedback on your work. All right, so now we've gotten that one out of the way. So then we have these other dialogues, these 4 different areas down here right by our layers panel. So here we can actually see that we can create brand new layers. We could create just a blank layer, which until we actually draw something inside of this, it is completely blank. There is no pixel or vector or anything or text or image until we've actually applied something. So if we take this brush and if we start drawing with a vector brush in here, it then becomes a vector layer. If we take a pixel brush and we draw in here, it then becomes a pixel layer. You can also, if you don't want to just create a random layer, honestly, that's what I always do. I don't actually create specific layers, but if you press and hold, you can actually go and create either a pixel layer or a vector layer, just like that. Finally, over here you have the eye tool or the eye option. So this allows you to hide the layer or show the layer. This is a very good tool. As you guys can see, this is how I have a lot of these different layers hidden so that we can keep them all in the same document, almost like a sketchbook, but allow you to view and hide different layers or layer groups. And then finally, the last one here is the actual layer group actions. So we're actually going to jump in here so we can look at a specific item. Now, if we look here, we have at top, add a layer, hide a layer, clear a layer, delete a layer, select multiple, duplicate layer, copy layer, cut layer, etc. Now, if let's say we wanted to completely undo everything that we've been doing here with this specific face, which is the one at the bottom middle, we could actually go and clear that layer. So now everything in there is completely gone. It's been completely erased without having to go through and taking the eraser tool and erasing every single little bit, possibly missing out on a couple little vector snippets. We can also go into here and we can duplicate the layer. This is very good if you're wanting to try something different with the different characters and things like that. Undo that. And then down here we have a few different options. Now there is right above that this little interesting icon here. This is something that is new. It came out before Adobe Max, but it's probably one of my favorite little tools. We're actually going to delete this extra one we have here, and we're going to create a new layer, and then we're going to tap this. So what this has just done is it's kind of created a mask for this layer. So if I take my vector brush tool and I will just increase the size to, we'll do like 95 so it's nice and big. And if I run across here, you'll notice, you can see here in the layer itself, we have this line here. If we actually undo the mask here, you can see that it's completely still its own image. But we hit that again, it now only goes onto the area that is showing up in the layer below. If we go and draw it up here, nothing is happening. It's only right there on that specific mask. Now, this is one of my favorite features that has come out for Adobe Fresco, but it does have its limitations. Its biggest limitation is the fact that if I went and merged these down, it then converts it into a pixel layer versus a vector layer. It's the biggest flaw with this. There are ways of getting around it, which will be in a future video. But this is by far one of my favorite features with Adobe Fresco currently. Now, if we go and look through here, there's many other different possible layer options here. I'm not going to go through them all, but it's good that you have a nice view of what to expect. Now, the last thing that we're going to show here is the actual ruler. So this is a tool that is by far, I feel like, one of the most underrated pieces or tool within the app here. So let's create a new layer. It allows you to draw more straight lines this way. I love the ruler, and I think that it's probably one of the best tools when it comes to doing big scene illustrations, and I think it's something that a lot of people should pay attention to who might not normally use it. All right, and then the final little thing that I'm going to do is actually something I'm going to go into more detail about with my next Adobe Fresco video, is this little area right here. So this is your touch area, and this allows you can actually go in and customize it however you want. You can move it around, but what this actually allows is it allows you to do a few different things. So we're actually going to just, let's decrease the size of this a bit so we can have it a little bit more manageable. All right, we're just going to draw an ear, and then we're going to draw a sideburn. All right, just for this quick little example. So if I double tap in here, you can see how the center of that circle is now blue. What that does is, because I have this specific setting, that is now my eraser. So I can now use that to erase whatever I want. But I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to double tap, I'm going to double tap, and then I'm going to tap it one more time. And now we have the outer circle selected. So this is actually one of my favorite parts of this. It now allows you to go through and trim your path. See how easy that was? You can go through and trim the path so you can remove excess areas, and it uses Adobe Sensei, which is their artificial intelligence engine, to go through and remove those areas. It's just a little quick tip that I wanted to share with you in case you guys want to check that out. All right, and so the final thing, the last thing in this tutorial that we're going to talk about is the actual export settings up above here. So a new feature that they now have that they didn't have before Adobe Max is the send to Illustrator. Before we had that, what I would actually do is I would go through and do publish, and then I would do export, and I would do PSD, which then would allow you to open this up in Photoshop and then you could go into the smart objects and open it up into Illustrator that way. But to go over what you have here in the export panel is you have the quick export, which will export it as a PNG. You can send that to your computer using AirDrop or any other types of ways that you have with a PC. I'm not a PC guy, so I don't really know how you would go about doing that. You also have export as we saw there, where you can change it from PNG, JPEG, PSD, or PDF. And then you also can send this as a Behance project or even a time-lapse export, where you can go through and you can watch how the entire illustration has been created. Now, because this file has multiple layers on it, it's going through and doing a time-lapse of all the individual layers combined on there. So just a fun little feature that we have there in case you want to use that for any types of YouTube videos, Instagram posts, and things of that nature. And I believe that covers everything. All right, everybody, I want to thank you so much for tuning into this video. I don't know how long this video is ultimately going to be. Hopefully it's not going to be too long. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment down below. I'll try to answer any and all questions that you guys have. Please remember to hit that like button if you guys liked the video, and remember to subscribe and turn on notifications. There's going to be a lot more videos coming in the near future. I'm finally getting back into the video game, and I'm excited to start sharing a lot with all of you. All right, guys, until next time, always remember to stay safe out there and stay passionate, stay positive, and stay creative. Hope you guys have a great day. That's it. I am out. Bye.